The following presentation is a gift from the team at Streamline Publishing, publishers of Fine Art Connoisseur, Plein Air Magazine, and weekly newsletters Fine Art Today, Realism Today, Plein Air Today, and American Watercolor, and events, the Plein Air Convention and the Figurative Art Convention. We offer over 400 different art instruction tutorials and ultra high-quality video by the world's leading artists. If you like what you see, help us support our artists and our team with your purchase. Each video aired has a special discount code for today only in the comments section with a link to the video offered. And to see everything we do, or if you want to receive notice of new releases, new products, and new events for artists, simply click the other link, which says, see everything we do. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Eric Rhodes, publisher of Fine Art Connoisseur and Plein Air Magazine. Today we've got a really special video for you, brand new release. It's called Mastering Landscapes with the great Paul Kratter. Enjoy.
Good morning, everybody. Paul Kratter here. I'm in Petaluma, California. Beautiful, beautiful spot. It's a little chilly. It is January after all, and Happy New Year to all of you. I've been an illustrator. I was an illustrator for 22 years and a plein air artist for 18. That makes 40 years of professional experience. So I've been doing this a long time. I know what I'm doing, and yet I still make mistakes occasionally, and I'll point those out because I'm sure I will at this this piece today. So I'll get set up and we'll get going. All right, let's talk about the materials I'll be using today. Start off with, I have a plein air palette. I have a canvas. This is a linen panel. It happens to be 18 by 14, just a nice size to work with. My brushes, I use, these are Brights, a variety from 2 to 8 for today. I have my oil paints out. They're a little bit odd names, but they're pretty common. This looks like Cad Yellow Medium, but it's called Turner Yellow. This is India Yellow Orange, Cad Orange, Cad Red Light, I believe, Alizarin Crimson, Ultramarine Blue Deep, Dioxazine Violet, Cobalt Blue, Sap Green, a lot of Titanium White. I do put out King's Blue. It's, for me, it almost always is a cool gray color to mix down. I don't always use it, but it's a nice color to have. I have a little container here for Terp. I do not use medium out here. Most important part of my painting process and material for me is a sketchbook and the ballpoint pen that I use. I have a flat edge razor blade to clean the palette, pencil to draw with real quickly on here, paper towels, painter's hat, water, outdoors here, sunscreen, and let's get ready to rock and roll, as they say. Why did I choose this area to paint in? It's beautiful. Petaluma is one of my favorite places to paint. I love two things about this. I love organic shapes. The trees are quite unique. And then the barns and the outbuildings, and there's a water tower that's very unique to Northern California. So those things are quite interesting. Also the weather. We've got a little bit of fog, a little bit of clouds that should burn off and get some nice sunlight, but that's going to be a little tricky to capture that, and that's all exciting when you're doing plein air painting. So let's get started. I already said it, but it bears repeating. The sketch is the most important part of my painting. Paper, and I use a ballpoint pen. Doesn't matter what you use, a pencil, marker, anything is great. I happen to like this. So let's get started. I'm going to put a frame around this fairly quickly Try to get the same proportions, 14 by 18. That's fairly close. Even to keep it straight, I'm using the edge of my finger to keep it relatively straight. I'm going to set my horizon line. I want this to be low. One of my goals here is to make the tree big and the ranch small. The ranch isn't small, but that makes the trees feel a little bit more powerful. You're going to see I'm drawing very lightly. I am just blocking in rectangle, triangle, long rectangle. And I'm also, you're going to see my head bob up and down looking at this scene because I am really observing. This is ultra important. Observation is one of the most important parts of painting, sketching, and I'm kind of building this scene, my sketch, the same way I would build my painting. The water tower. So I'm pretending like I'm doing Photoshop. And when you look at the scene closely, you'll see that I basically compressed this. I'm basically, if I took a photograph of this and printed it, I would cut it out and almost paste this scene together. That's how I do my Photoshop. The other thing that I want to do is this water tower is against the hills back there, and I'm going to surround this Monterey pine, which is unique to this area, and kind of frame that the water tower so that you see that shape a little bit more clearly. If I go, it looks like I'm starting to go outside my box. That's okay. I can shift it over left or right. That's why you're doing the sketch. The first reason I do the sketch is this worthy of painting? 99% of the time it is. But occasionally people say, how come you don't have any bad drawings in your sketchbook? Because I throw them away. I don't want people to see, I make mistakes, we all do, but I don't want them in my sketchbook. I'm not vain, but I just don't care to. So I'm looking for the big organic shapes here. I'm looking for this. I love this, the eucalyptus trees. They kind of have these umbrella shapes, straight trunks. And now I feel like I've got the feel of this scene. I move the tree to the right so that it's in the frame, in the painting, and I have an artistic license. It's on me, but it's in my pocket, and I don't want to get it out. But it allows me to do to move things around and be artistic. All right, so that's a pretty good sketch. Here's my horizon line. A little bit above that, that's the ground plane, but I'm 5'8". 5'8" over here is right here. So that's my horizon line. Sometimes I'll even put HL. Now that I feel like I've got a good feel for this shape, I'm going to start blocking this in with heavier lines. It's overcast. I'm hoping the sun comes out. I've also did a comp about 2 weeks ago from here, and it's pretty accurate, and I'm happy with it. And now I'm starting to do this cross-hatching. I know there will be a sunlight that will hit that this rooftop, and I'll show you in the painting that I did before, and that's what I want to have. So even though I'm looking up, I can see the sun's going to come through at some point during this painting, and then I'll be able to refer to it. I'll be able to get that light in, and if it doesn't come out, I'm going to use my painting as my guide and have it a more sunny day. But I am going to have some of those clouds in there because that's really the light that we have today. Okay, starting to come around. And you can see I'm developing this. I don't go right after it. I made this roof a little bit too high. It's not awful, but that peak of that barn should be a little bit higher. Now, the eucalyptus trunks are very straight. So I'm going to indicate a few. And then what I do is a eucalyptus tree is kind of like somewhat like broccoli, a taller version of it. The foliage is a group of a lot of different spheres. Some are flatter, some are smaller, and whether I draw all the way through to the outside here, sometimes that helps me with my shape, and then some of these overlap. Where's the sun coming from? Here. So I'm going to light this about 1/4 sunlight, 3/4 shadow. I'm not too terribly concerned with the sky holes. I'll put some of those in. And now I'm putting in a nice value, a light value to start with, and I just start adding to it. The eucalyptus will also have some nice angular branches, and there's a couple that come out here that are outside. Maybe there were leaves on it, foliage at one time, and they've just fallen off, whatever. Here's some of these umbrella shapes that really are part of what makes the eucalyptus so nice. I want this to come in front of here so it overlaps. To make these trunks show up. I'll talk about this when I'm painting, but even now, just as important to see the negative shape as the positive shape. That's how you can draw better. The trunks will go up. You'll see them. If the foliage wasn't here, you see the trunk all the way up, but it gets lost in the foliage and then comes back out. So I'll do that with the painting. Talk about that when we get to that part of the tree. All these little things that are really important. I really looked at Percy Gray, did beautiful eucalyptus trees, almost any kinds of trees, but he kept them very full, not as many sky holes as you might see in a tree, and that just makes the tree have more power, be a lot fuller. And yet, if you were adding a lot more trees around here, you might have a really thin one, a young tree that hasn't grown up. Maybe it's a teenager, and it's still in development stage. And that's kind of how I look at things. So here's this quarter. This is going to be a quarter. So now I'm going to make this a little bit darker, this a little bit darker. It might hit in here. I can do that with paint. So it did help to draw this in just to see that shape a little bit more. I'm going to add, I want to kind of get a few more these little shapes outside of here. And I'm really observing. Head up and down, making comparisons. Okay, that looks pretty good. There's some trees farther back here that will be indicated. I was here a few weeks ago. They're fainter now, but they're kind of fall color, even though this is wintertime. They're going to have a little yellowish orange tinge to it. The ground here was barren. The field was fallow and nothing was growing. But I didn't like that color. It's my choice. And I'm going to make it warmer. I'm going to make it a gold color because I like that better. I can make that change. This tree is a little bit more, I think the needles or leaves are smaller in shape, and so it's going to be a little bit more flat. There'll be some modulation from the light to the shadow side, but it wants to be a little bit more, a little darker and flatter than this tree. It's just these leaves are a little bit flatter. So this maybe takes 10 minutes. If the light was changing quite rapidly, I might do a 2-minute sketch. It just depends on, this is kind of nice that it's very overcast and gives me time to develop the sketch and really get everything in. You can just see how important all this is to making your painting work. The field is there are some tracks in here, and it's almost perspective, and it's leading back to the vanishing point is about here, so or maybe it's over here. So I'm trying to get these kind of perspective lines. I may have a few in there, but that starts making this kind of one-point perspective. I may move this over. It's not a big deal. I just don't want that point of this building, this little outhouse, to be right there. And if I'm going to frame this, I got to be careful. So I may just leave this where it is. Okay, I'm also looking at this particular scene. The mountain goes like this. There's another one to the left that comes down at a little bit of an angle, and that's more interesting to me than being flatter, than just being straight across. And there's another hillside over here, so I might, whether I put that in, that's not as big a deal, but all right. The clouds are just starting to break up. That might be the thing that I paint right now. I re-emphasize these outside dimensions. A lot of times I'll go in here and really emphasize this outside line shape. Of course, these are trees. They're softer edges, and the paint will address that. But at this stage, I'm more concerned with just a graphic shape, and I'll talk about that a lot more, how important seeing shapes are. I consider myself a designer of shapes. I am a impressionist of some sort, but a designer of shapes better describes what I see and how I attack art. Okay, that's the start. Maybe there's some clouds here, and if they go away or they start to diminish, a lot of times I can just look at this and go, okay, they were a lightish gray. I have a pretty good memory of things, of what they look like. Overlap just a little bit. This is very light because the clouds aren't very defined. All right, is that good? Yeah, and the sun's coming out. Here's the shadow. that's really key right here. So this whole side of the barn is in shadow, and this little slice of light, that's a really neat graphic shape in here. And I want to make sure that it's not 50-50, but for right now it works. All right. Other goal is to have fun. I always do, no matter how much I struggle. And I also like to say, nailed it. It makes me happy. Quite often I'm painting with people. It makes them happy, and I'm happy with the sketch. It doesn't always happen, but I'm pretty happy with this one. All right, now on to the paint. So the next step that I'm going to be doing is the shadow shapes, but first I have to use a pencil and redraw, take my sketch and redraw that on here in about the same place. Of course, I just put it over here. All right, so I'm basically going to copy this down, establish my horizon line, and I draw paint with my head at a tilt. I'm going to try to stay straight and get these buildings straight. And there's a few tricks you can use to make sure you don't do that. But I'm just bearing down just a little bit, just trying to find where these shapes are and keep the same composition. I spent 10 minutes on this drawing, and I can make small little changes. I do. I had mentioned about this little outbuilding that's out there. I want to maybe make this a little longer. Don't want, the frame's going to come about a 1/4 inch here. So I don't want this to feel like a tangent. I may have to adjust that. Here's that water tower. It's basically 2 blocks, but this one is a little bit, it slants on both sides. The little triangle, these are all very graphic shapes that I see. So here's where that eucalyptus starts. Some big ovals. And I don't have to spend nearly as much time because I've already done it once. Now this will be 2 times. I want the peak to be important, so I'm going to move that tree over a little bit. It's that funny shape, and it tilts, cants to the side. A little bit here. There's some trees in here. On this side as well, that hillside comes down here. Here's my kind of perspective lines. Very quickly. Step back, look at it. Okay, now I'm ready to start my 3rd drawing on here. That's how important. My sketch, I'm going to leave right here at my feet so I can always look at it. I want to make sure the impact of what I saw is, that's always really very important to me. I keep paper towels in my pocket, and some people have them under their armpit, but this is how I do it. I'm going to mix up with cad orange and a little bit of blue, just a warm tone. I like really warm paintings. That's wow, look what I happen to have. Browns and oranges. Those are Kratter colors. To keep something straight, relatively straight, I use the side of the easel to do this. You can, same with these buildings, to keep them straight is to, you can brace your little finger here. Comes down about the same angle. And this barn has a little there's 2 rooftop angles. also comes down about here. So I'm observing, trying to get this fairly equal, fairly straight. Where's that shadow just went away? That light that hit that? Also, you can see I'm kind of holding this like a pencil. You know, there's all different ways to hold your brush for different mark making. And that's what I'm doing with this, is using a brush to make different marks. A little triangle, shallow triangle. There's a roof that is in here. It goes behind the tree, but sometimes to help draw it is to draw through as if that tree is not here. And again, I played Photoshop. My painting, I can do what I want, and I'm just moving it over. It's still the intention of the, I'm keeping the look of the piece, but I'm just making optical improvements that I like. It's my aesthetic to move some of this stuff around. Tree, I like this, just a little bit of upward tilt. May not be quite that much, but that's, again, what I think looks nice. Again, I want to try to, this shape is so important, I move the tree over just a little bit. This just comes with experience. This is where some of the trees are. So I put some, a couple bumps in here. This come down an angle, maybe it comes up here a little bit, this at a slightly angle. I don't want this to look like, let's just use the word roly-poly hillside. It doesn't want to be equal on one side. I'm putting the barn doors kind of in here. These are just kind of graphic shapes. I'm putting some of the direction of the boards in here. They just help me know which direction this, here's the tin roof. All right, now you'll also see that I do a lot of this. This is just like a baseball player that plays catch to warm up. What purpose does it serve? A baseball player has thrown the ball, a million times. I've painted, not a million paintings, but a million paint strokes. It just kind of feels good. The other thing that's nice to do, now I'm going to put this a little further back, and I have a little bit more athletic pose, and it just allows me to be a little bit looser. Sometimes I feel like I get a little bit tight, and so by staying back a little bit further and a little bit more athletic, maybe I get a little more unique brushwork and vitality in the types of strokes. Because I know the light is changing, I'm working a little bit faster, and it's giving me just some energy, and I can slow down as I progress through the painting. But I want to kind of get this in. If I was painting in a really cold, the wind there's very little wind, but sometimes that makes you paint faster. You're colder and you go, oh, I want to, it actually captures some of, again, that vitality. All right, it's a pretty linear approach, and here's my horizon line is right in here, so these, there's kind of the perspective. If this were a nice, rows of plants, I'm just going to have a couple of these in here just to indicate, so it feels like it's going back into space. All right, let's get to the real shadow shapes on this. All right, now the next step is to block in these shadow shapes. And this is the third time I've drawn this. That's how important the drawing is. I cannot emphasize how much when you're a representational artist that the drawing become really accurate. I don't care how loose you might get. That's great to have all that expression, but the drawing should be fairly accurate. So I'm going to start with the trees, the organic shapes, and because this particular tree it's a little more blue-green, I'm just going to block in the whole shadow as if it is all in shadow. Sap green, a little ultramarine blue, just a little bit of white, not too much. It's going to be fairly transparent, fairly thin. I don't notice how often I use a paper towel to wipe off the paint. It's just to get a certain feel that's fairly liquidy, fairly thin. It's not going to drip, but it's also not very thick. This type of tree is fairly linear, so I've turned the brush sideways as I get to the edge, and I'm trying to get this kind of shape. So I'm just using the flat side of this. And the other thing, sometimes just to cover it quicker, I'll just use I can scrub it. Just kind of go back and forth kind of rapidly. And I'm just going around the shape of this water tower. Around here, a lot of artists try to find a piece of property that has a water tower. What a great studio. They're all the way up to, I'm sure they even go past Mendocino. I have a friend who does have a studio in a water tower. So this is just a block in. And quite often, I'm out in public. I like meeting people, and somebody will come by and go, "That's beautiful." And maybe they see the sketch, and I go, "I've put 10 minutes of work in on this." And I know what they mean. They mean, they're just happy to see you out here and to see an artist. All right, the eucalyptus trees are a little bit warmer, so I'm adding a little orange to that pile of this organic green. And a lot of the trees around here are, their base color is kind of a sap green, and then I modify that. And I'm using fairly big, choppy brush strokes. That's just the nature of how I work and how the end product hopefully has that very graphic look throughout. And I'm just trying to cover these shadow shapes. Could I have used a little bigger brush? Yeah, I just didn't. And this will go fast enough. That's where the trunks are. 3, 4, 5, I'm not sure, but I want to indicate fairly straight as they grow upwards. And by bringing down some of this foliage, maybe lower on this side, that's going to frame those trunks. Now there's a couple different approaches. I could put an overall color over the whole tree. That's one way, or you can just paint the shadow shapes. And I think just because that's how I intended to do this, for this particular video, I will just do these shadow shapes. I may change my mind. It's not written in stone, you have to do it a certain way. And sometimes you put something down and you're just, it's like doing the drawing 3 times. You cover it up and you've already practiced where that sphere is. The light's coming eventually from here. That means maybe this part of the foliage is casting a shadow over this side. So it's very important as a landscape painter to tell the audience where that light source is coming from. Some of these loose branches I'm not going to indicate at this time. I did a little bit when I got to the started this sketch, but it's not as important right now. Like I said, this is fairly watery, fairly transparent, and in half an hour, 40 minutes, the paint really sets up. I'm looking for the big sky holes in here, not the little ones. I want to stay away from this area. In fact, let's just do, this is bothering me. So I just decided, it's my painting, I can do what I want, just to make this a silhouette shape, and I'll tell you why in a second. All right, it's better. It just shows the shape a little bit better, and I was just getting a little too picky with that. But it's a good lesson that you can change your mind. This is not a math problem, it's an art problem. Now you can see how graphic, and when I came to this spot, most often with trees, it's the silhouette shape that I see. Bam, bam, these two things. This might be a little too cool green, but at this stage, it's all right. This is really standing out. These trunks, maybe I'll just indicate them just now. That's a little bright, but it's, just want to get that vertical. The purple is a very powerful color in this particular paint, and you don't need much to have it really flow and affect something. So these are just light, directional, upward. Don't love it. That's better. And then what I'll do quickly is take that same kind of background foliage color, sap green with some orange, and now paint the negative shape. And that's better. There's a couple here. You know, I have lots of confidence that I'll be able to pull this off, or I wouldn't have been hired to do this. Did I tell you one of my goals is to have fun? I always do. I don't have to say it, but to you guys, it's always fun, even when I struggle. All right, now that's better, much better. It reads better, not perfect. A little notch in there. Okay, that's much better. I'm going to wipe my brush, not entirely. Clean it just a little bit. Now I'm going to put the shadow shape of the barn in here. I'm using the King's Blue. I touched the green, little purple, Knock it back, a little orange to gray it down. Now it's getting closer, a little blue. And I'm even winking, I'm closing one eye to kind of look at what I'm seeing there. Also want to show you, this was the painting that I did here 2 weeks ago. I don't want to copy it. That's why it's off to the side, but I'll have this up for comparisons just so that I'm doing pretty much the same representational thing without copying. It's a little bright, but I think the value is pretty good. And I can adjust it now. I can put a little orange, a little yellow orange in there. That barn was white at one time, and over the years it has changed, and it's just the paint's chipped off. So it's going to have some color changes, some color modulation. I got a nice purpley, gray purpley color. It's more important at this stage that the value is right, not the color at this stage. Couple of things you can ask yourself as you start painting: is it lighter or darker, warmer or cooler, more intense or less intense? And intense, that means, is it brighter or duller? And those are really great keys to developing your painting. And sometimes these are very subtle little changes. It's really important to draw with the brush. And I'm drawing these shapes, triangles, organic ovals. I will soften things at the end, but you'll see me make even changes. Okay, maybe this should be lower. These two shapes are about equal. It's my choice to change that and make it more interesting. So that's pretty much the shadow shapes. What's this big hole in here? That's the rooftop, the orange rooftop. That's a tin roof. Tin roof rusted, as the song says. And there's that shadow coming across here. That's one of the big keys to this. The other thing is you pay for the whole brush. You can scratch into your painting to help draw. Doesn't really matter, what you use. This barn roof that's tin, let's make that in shadow. So just blocking that in, and then this is the rooftop that's coming this way, and maybe it's getting a little bit more light. I've extended this roof. I don't know if I want that. It's really a short roof, but we'll just see. You shouldn't use your finger, but what the heck. Now here's this water tower is just a little lighter. It's because maybe it got painted recently, like a decade ago. And so it's going to be a bit lighter. I'll have some of this color come through so that the two areas are similar or related. Hi, Paul Kratter here. Welcome to my plein air demo. In this demo, you're going to learn how important the sketch is, starting with this little tiny sketch, little 3" by 3" sketch basically with a ballpoint pen. You're going to learn about shapes, about design, about composition, about mistakes that I will make, I do, and also some experimentation and a lot of creativity. This video will help anybody that has a hard time starting a painting and having a consistent process all the way through. I've had that when I was first starting. I've had 40 years experience, 22 as a commercial illustrator and 18 as a plein air painter. It's not always easy. It takes a lot of practice, but I think you'll be able to follow along in these easy steps and yet still have a lot of room for creativity. Join me if you want. Take notes, just watch the video, but really enjoy it. I have a lot of information to give you, and I guarantee you'll have a good time along the way.
Well, that's Paul Kratter, and the video is called Mastering Landscapes, and you can learn more about it at streamline.art. Remember, we have a special discount for today only in the comments section. Look for it. Now let's get right to our interview with Paul Kratter.
I first started getting into the art world quite young. I don't remember, 4 or 5 years old, and I drew. I drew animals and I drew my sport figures. Those were the two biggest interests I have, and I even won a prize. Maybe in kindergarten, San Francisco Chronicle, a local newspaper, I did a drawing of an elephant and I won first place. What did I win? A key to the audio box and free tickets to the zoo, which was all of a couple of miles away. It was great. It validated my entire career. I do think about it. It's kind of an important thing. And then I just kept on drawing those same subjects primarily all the way through high school. And then I went to junior college, College of San Mateo, and I got an AA degree in graphic arts. That's the beginning of my strength as an illustrator. And then I met a girlfriend and we ended up going to Art Center College of Design. And that was all important because the two most important people in my life, Larry Carroll, Lawrence Carroll as he was known as a professional, and my wife, Tia, I met there. I mean, if that isn't a great place, but it was a commercial arts school. I learned the fundamentals of drawing, of composition, of value, and I had great teachers. I learned concepts which weren't as important, but they've become more important later on in my career. So I graduated in 1980 with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in illustration. I immediately freelanced coming out of school, and one of the first jobs I got was at the National Football League properties in Los Angeles. And they gave me a cover magazine of the Green Bay Packers. I didn't like the team or know anything about the team. And then the guy, David Boss, one of the best art directors I've ever worked for, said, if you get this done in a timely fashion, I'll give you 2 more covers, the New England Patriots and my favorite team, the San Francisco 49ers. I even have a cute story. You had to be, I was a professional at this point. So I walked out of the office very proud, walked down the hall, pushed the button to the elevator, went in the elevator, and as soon as the door closed, yay! And I'm jumping up and down like a little kid, because I am a little kid. I was excited. Don't even know what it was. I was paid $1,000. That was great back then. Would be great now too. So that was my first introduction. That was sports. And then I worked for freelance again with the Nature Company, which was based up here in Northern California in Berkeley. And I would bring them projects and my ideas, and nothing really stuck. And then the art director said, this is not the correct word exactly. I need an architectural style animal. And I thought, it just hit me, architectural. I had a photograph I took about in 8th grade of a tiger. The tiger was the tail was in a perfect circle. So I did a blueprint, I did a mock-up, and he goes, I don't know if this works. So it looked very architectural, had call-outs for all the different aspects of the tiger. I did the hand lettering. It was very accurate. And he says, I don't see how this worked. I said, you're going to find out. I was very confident. So it's not a blueprint, it's a blue line. And it's a lousy surface. I had it dry mounted and I painted on it. He goes, oh my God, this is great. And then he asked me if I could do a lion. And I didn't have a lion in the same pose. And I went to the zoo and I used 9 different photos, 10 different photos combination to finally come up with it. And those 2 posters for the longest time hung in the zoo in the lion house. How cool is that? And then this is hard to believe, the last job I ever did took me 7 years. And it was a self-penned book called The Living Rainforest, an ABC book on the rainforest. And I wrote it, I basically directed it, I did the design, and I did 26 illustrations. I started out, I did 7 or 8, and I just kept going until I got 26. And I wrote to a company, a great Dell Publishing, and I got a form letter back that said, we get over 10,000 unsolicited manuscripts. I go, now what? Long and short of it, Charles Bridge published it, and I was so honored. It did really well money-wise, which is great for a young family. And then it got a great award, as the other 2 did, the other 2 posters in communication arts. They don't have a first place, second. It's just getting in there is the award. And I'm thrilled for both of those. That was the last job, this book. It took 7 years from concept. I sure had other jobs in between, but it took that long to finally get it printed. And basically I hit a home run, a walk-off home run, using a baseball analogy. And what better way to end your commercial art career? I got offered a couple other jobs that just didn't work out, but I'm kind of glad. We could have used the money, but I'm glad it ended that way. Pretty cool. I had a few different mentors, but basically they were teachers, which are mentors. The first one I can remember probably was Dwight Harmon, a very unusual, crazy guy. You'd come into class, and his face would be painted green. He loved life, but that was part of his personality. But I took an independent study class from him. I didn't even get an A, I got a B+, but I learned doing some different textures and stuff, using different materials I never would have used. That was my idea. Dan McCaw is a great artist, and I learned some key things. He came in and he said, I don't know anything about perspective. That was the title of the class was Illustrated Perspective. He goes, what do you think if we just learn to paint? It's like, who doesn't want to learn that? Last year, I took a class that was co-taught. That was very different, by Don Weller and Mike Gaines. Mike Gaines worked at the NFL, got my foot in the door, and although we never had much work, he really helped me. And then Don Weller was a great guy. He could never critique. But if you wanted positive feedback, he was the one that gave it to you. And Mike Gaines was the tough guy. They were a great pair. Who else can I think of? Jim Henniger. That's not his first name, but a wonderful old man. He came out of retirement. He had to be in his 70s. He had these deep slits in his earlobes. He had joined a tribe in northern Africa, and he had traveled the world. He had a sketchbook like this filled with watercolors. What an inspiration. And there was a faculty area. He didn't go there. He came and sat with us and had breakfast or just shot the breeze. And it was so cool. I never had this guy, Baron Story, big, deep German guy, big, deep voice. Even though I never took him, he just inspired me. But the most influential guy I had was Craig Nelson, who's now at the Academy of Art, University in San Francisco. But he was a very young illustrator. I never took him as in class, but I would wander. They had an open door policy. You'd come in. Even recently, I could go talk to him about landscape art. But you bring in stuff. He'd talk about pricing. He'd tell you how hard the business would, how fun it was, all these different aspects. He will tell you, I was in his class, and I wasn't, but my roommate was. We went in all the time. So these were very influential mentors of mine. Even Keith McConnell, who did the cover of Endless Summer for the Beach Boys. Very whimsical illustration. We didn't know this at the time. He was a Marine, and he'd come up. This is like my very first class, and you'd be drawing, and you had to draw in pen and ink. You could not start over if you made a mistake. We all made mistakes. And he'd stand behind you, and you just like, okay, what's he gonna do? What's he thinking? And you'd feel this, and he'd go, Paul, start over. I was like, oh, thank you. Scared the crap out of us, but I remember coming in, and we had to do a project on hats, and I did all these sport hats. We brought our work in, and he got mad. He says, what kind of crap is this from everybody? And he goes, Paul, is this what you would do for Sports Illustrated? It's like, I got pissed. F you. But I got mad at myself. I didn't take it seriously. So I went home and I kicked ass. I worked really hard. And he goes, that's better. That's really better. And we all learned something. By being a tough guy, we got this, okay. The end of the term, he invited us over to his house. He was a sweetheart. That's when we thought, wait a second, you have this lighthearted style, and he was a softie. He had a wonderful wife. I just remember him being very genuine. And the last day of class, last day of school, last day I graduated, on graduation day, I went to see him because he said he would help. And I had my notebook, and he said he would help me with getting names of art directors. So I got this out, got my pen, and said, Keith, do you remember? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, I want you to go see anybody and everybody. And I'm right, that's a cop-out. That's a cop-out. And he goes, I can't tell you what art director is going to like your work that likes mine. He says, go meet people, make appointments. And he goes, you're a really good artist and you're a really good guy. You'll do just fine. And yeah, the artists really helped, but being a good guy, that really struck me. I am a good guy, and I'm sincere, loyal and stuff. And so that was a very sweet thing to say, but these were really great mentors. Also, my fellow students pushed us. Larry was totally different from me. We were pretty much equal in ability, and yet he did these way out concept things. I wasn't conservative, but I was not that risk taker, but we drove each other. And then I met Tia, and we ended up marrying, obviously. But so the inspiration and the people that I met there were great. I can also remember a class, we didn't think we had a very good teacher, but the students that were, oh my gosh, he's in it, she's in it, equally man and woman, young men and women. And you look around, we got to bring your work up. The other thing that Art Center did was we got a great work ethic. And my wife and I we work really hard. We're both really prolific at what we do. You also learn that there's competition. And there's good competition. There's sharing of ideas and whatnot, of materials. And that's just a wonderful aspect. And I really was lucky to go to Art Center because that was the only school I applied to. And that was a risk. I just didn't know any better. And at first, I didn't know where I belonged. And then I thought, okay, I kind of belong here. And then I got better and I got more confident. And when I got my work, probably in fourth semester, on the student wall, the student gallery, it's like, I've arrived, I'm somebody. You know, that was a big, because I just thought I never would attain this. When I first went to the school and looked at the student gallery and you go, oh my, look at how great this work is. But it just shows you that in a couple of years working your tail off and still having fun, that you can reach something that's attainable. And I'm still reaching. You know, hopefully as an artist you never think you're there, and I certainly don't at all today. I hated oil at Art Center because it smelled. I got headaches. And I switched overnight. I discovered plein air painting and oil painting at the Sonoma Plein Air. And a few of my friends were in it, and Tia was in it as a kind of a guest artist through Pixar, and Bill Cohn. I knew very few people. I fell in love with it. I went to the opening day, and I remember seeing this guy, I think his name was Doug Ball, and I went up and said, why did you paint this pink house first? Or tell me about that. And he says, I painted that first because that's the area that was going to change the most. You always, if it's tricky light, then paint the area that's going to change the most. I've always remembered that. I was so taken by the art, I went out and bought a set of water-soluble oils because they didn't smell. They were a bit sticky, and I bought brights. I had always used rounds. I wanted a different look. I had never ever painted on a wood panel. I painted on primed, gesso primed wood panels, totally different, because I wanted to learn and do something different. I still drew well. I composed well. I knew my values. And so there was a learning curve with oil, but I came up fairly fast. I remember having my studio filled with probably 75 pieces, and my wife came in and said, Paul, I bet you have 50 pieces, 75 pieces in there. I go, no, it's really 50. And she was right, it was 75. And she goes, it's time for you to become a professional, to make a living out of this. And I said, okay. And I called a couple of people I knew, Randy Sexton, and he said, enter as many shows as you can, try to get into some galleries, let them come to you. You can call them if they have a show. And I called two different galleries, one up in Sonora and one in Point Reyes that are both defunct now. And they both let me into their show, and then they both ended up representing me. And it was the big difference between illustration and plein air painting. I remember Tia saying, what do you think the difference will be? And I said, I don't know. I'll work independently. I will go to more galleries and go to shows. I'll probably meet new people. And the first person I met was Tim Horn, and we're now great friends. But I have met so many more. It's made a difference in my life completely, because the plein air convention and all these plein air shows, I've just met hundreds of people. And I keep in contact with a lot of them. And we get together. So it's a big social aspect. And then going back to competition, again, I love that healthy competition. You're painting with these great men and women, young, older, doesn't matter. And you go, I gotta up my game. I gotta up it. And so whether it was with Susie Baker or Lori Putnam or Jason Sacron, these are all great, Michael Obermeyer and Dan Schultz. They're just multitude of, Jill Carver, even, Matt Smith. You have to bring your game up. You don't always do it. The other thing, doing the plein air circuit, you paint fast, and sometimes we would say, how many did you get done today? You go 3, 4, some people 5, but the quality had to be there, and sometimes it wasn't. You were trying to get a lot of pieces done, but it made you paint quicker, make good decisions. And now when I go out, Matt was the one who said, I take my time. Even a 6x8, I do a finished painting. So I'm not rushed now. I have a pace. I know what I'm doing. I still make mistakes. I still always have fun. But he basically gave me permission to slow down. Jill Carver was also one that said, it's quality, not quantity. So these are important. That's 1 or 2 little words, but they hit home with all of us. So I could go on and on about all the different artists, but the plein air convention was such a huge. I went to all but one of them, and they made a great difference. And I never would have been able to do this video if I hadn't gone to those. And I was so surprised when Eric said, we want to do a video of you. You're a master, or he did say, you're a master of trees. And I said, I don't like that word, but thank you for thinking that highly of me. I'm honored, I'm thrilled. I'm kind of embarrassed too. I don't like to slap myself on the back. But so be it. So here I am, a happy artist, a very content artist. I do use a lot of different mediums. I did pastel for one job. It wasn't very good. It tells you that you can't master, or if you only fiddle around for a little bit, it's not going to work out. I started in high school with pen and ink, and I did that as an illustrator, and I just started doing that in some wildlife work. So I still love that. And then I took up gouache. I did that in college, and I brought it back again. It's great. It's tricky, but it's a wonderful medium. And my career as an illustrator really was acrylics. I used it quite a bit like watercolors with washes, and then developed the opaques in it. It's a bit chalky, and that's the reason that I wanted to switch to oils. When I originally switched to water soluble, the reason I switched to regular oils was Kevin Corder had said, asked me why, and I said, it's the smell. And he goes, you can use terpenoid, it doesn't smell. And a lot of the brands now don't, and especially painting outdoors. And so he also said they have a more buttery consistency, whereas the water soluble ones I was using were sticky. It was a huge difference. The only thing is, now I get dirty, and Tia says, I know where you were today. You came in the kitchen, there's your fingerprints, it's all over the car, it's in the living room. It's like, I'm sorry. It's just, that's the hazards of oil paint. But other than that, I love it. But so that's a lot of different mediums, and just working on different surfaces. I've discovered metal surfaces for my wildlife work is totally different. It's fantastic, and that was something that I found a couple sheets of metal in the house and small little pieces, and put on Facebook. How do you prime it? How do you get the surface right? And Frank Serrano said, just use polyurethane and lightly sand it with steel wool. It's a wonderful surface. So that may go all the way back to Dwight Harmon and experimenting with different materials. Painting, both plein air and studio, are equal. You may like one better. At times I like one better, and at times I like the other one. And I'll give you an analogy as well. Painting plein air is exciting. You have light changing. You might have a little bit of wind. You might be in the Grand Canyon, and if there's thunder and lightning coming, and you got to race through it. Oh my gosh, and then it blows over, and you come back out and you go, oh my gosh, this is great. So there's excitement there. You also do slow down. I love wildlife. You get a chance to see wildlife outdoors, and because you're holding still. I am such a people person. you meet people. I let kids paint on my paintings all the time. I just adore people, especially from all over the world with different accents and whatnot. I really do love that. The analogy is it's like playing live music. You're going to make mistakes, but you get feedback. There's excitement there, and I love that. I don't get I get the excitement part, and the feedback is from galleries. Somebody buys your painting, or your friends say, this is great, it's expressive, I like this loose area. That's all in painting in plein air. And in the studio, I get to listen to my music. You know, I don't listen to music outdoors. Thankfully, Tia doesn't get to hear all the Jethro Tull and the 3,200 downloaded songs I have. I don't listen to it all the time, but I listen to music all the time, and it puts me in a great mood. But plein air painting or studio painting is just like recording an album in the studio. You have time. You can do take after take. You can correct things. You can scrape things down. You can put it away. You can have your coffee. You can have your cocktail at night. So to be able to slow down, but the one thing I try to do is try to paint with the same energy. And it's harder. It's a little easier now. I do have to paint with my wildlife work indoors, but I do go to the zoo and sketch. I should do it more often, or I should draw a cat. But that's the plein air way with animal life, is drawing on location. So I value both quite a bit. They're equally hard, equally exciting, equally have their benefits. I'm giddy because we've been to Africa 3 times, and it's made all the difference in our entire family. We loved every minute of all 3 trips. The first trip I brought, we all brought journals. We all wrote, we all drew. I did a little bit of painting. We all did that. That was Tanzania and Kenya. And then we went to Botswana and South Africa. I did a little bit of the same sort of thing. I think we all did. And then I contacted Plein Air Magazine and I said, we're going to South Africa. I'd like to do it in a journalistic fashion like Thomas Kitts. I love the article that he did. I'm going to an exotic location and I want to paint in gouache. I get a call back, email from Kelly Kane saying, you hit the trifecta. Exotic location, we don't feature gouache, and you want to do something in a journalistic style. So I'm not a great writer at all, bad speller, but I kept notes every day about the wildlife and then my painting. And when I came back, I had all my work professionally photographed and sent every single painting. I had not done a gouache painting in 30 years. I did 9 or 10 practice ones. They're good. You know, I know what I'm doing, but they're not great. I had to paint in the middle of the day at noon because we were on safari during the best parts of the day. So I did a couple studio pieces, which was fine. And I did one sunrise painting that was pretty cool, but they were right outside the 3 places we stayed at. So didn't have a lot of diversity. I didn't do that many. But they printed up the article and they really did they did a great job. They didn't edit anything. And I even got a couple of notes from people saying, your writing's great. It's like, maybe I'm most proud of that, but I'm really proud of the paintings and the whole process. It just was a great experience. And the gouache was really fun. I did half page and full, nothing bigger than 8x8. That's about as big, or 6x6. That's as big as you need to go. We got evacuated out of a fire out of here a year and a half ago, maybe a year ago, and that was one thing I didn't save. And fortunately, we came back in the house. House was fine. The fire came within a quarter mile. I would have grabbed, that's how precious that is. But the article was was wonderful to have as a document to our trip. And I always write on there, adventure is out there. That came from Pixar. And then I always write, Africa is now in your blood and we will return. I'm a different artist because my illustration background. And I spent a lot of time, we drew every day at Art Center, every single day. We had to do, you could never turn in an illustration without usually doing two tracing paper, not thumbnails, but sketches, pretty detailed. So you're always drawing. And I have a fairly blocky style in both my drawing style, pen and ink style, which I think is reflected in especially in my painting. And I do this, I do use curves, but I see more straight lines. And so I do have a chunky kind of application. So I think that makes it, makes my style a little bit unique. It really helps to have a sense of humor and be lighthearted, because when you go to shows and talk to people, that helps sell things, sells your work, because you're laughing, you're having a good time, you have a good story about your art. And is it going to make a piece sell? No, but is it going to help? Yeah, a lot of us have that. So, and I'm also really giving. I'll let kids paint on things. I give my sketches away. I've given a lot of paintings away. Just, I like it. That's what I like doing best, is being as giving as I can be. So, yeah, it's a pretty cool career to be in. I'm not lucky, I'm fortunate. My daily life as a painter starts early. I get up early, have breakfast, come in here. I like a clean studio. Relatively clean. I'm not perfect at all, but I kind of organize stuff. Unless it is organized, I'm ready to go to work. I immediately just start painting, and I've got, whether it's wildlife stuff or I immediately drive out. I can't wait. I cannot wait to start painting. It's also to be with people. I'm incredibly social, and not to a fault, but I get very giddy. Coffee probably doesn't help that, but it gives me energy, which is great. So in both cases, I work for about 3 hours maybe. I have a relatively short attention span. So then I run my errands. I might go hike, used to run. I like all aspects of my work, whether it's boxing it up, shipping it, framing it, organizing stuff, cutting boards, all that's part of it. Even Tia doesn't like shipping her stuff. I like making custom boxes. It's fun. So all that is part of the process. And I might run to one of my galleries and go chat. I talk with all my art friends. And then I come back and I might paint 2 hours or 3 hours. I might come after dinner. I usually come and work for a couple hours. So I'd say I work a 6-hour day. That's not long hours, but I work 7 days a week. So I'm getting my full hours. And if I'm traveling for a plein air thing, I'm working a lot. I still take naps almost every single day. But I'm prolific. I'm just prolific with my work, and we both have a great work ethic. So I have my fun. I did it at Art Center. I built in fun time. I went to the junior college and took a couple of PE classes because I wanted to meet a girl. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, but I also wanted athletics. So I'm really good at organizing my time. So those are all important. And then I'm sure this is going to help a lot of you out there. We're usually not trained in the business side of things. So that's my goal in 2021, is to be more proactive in my business side. And we're just starting, we're going to have a Zoom meeting with 10, 12 people, and maybe do it a couple of different times so we can all exchange what our experiences, young people, people my age and some older, because we all have different experiences. Social media, Instagram, Facebook. I don't know about Etsy. I'd like to know about that. Different shows, different organizations. Should you belong? Should you join a small group of painters? The plein air convention, plein air shows, galleries. These are all, and then, you know, maybe not showing at a gallery, maybe a bookstore, cafe, coffee place. Who knows? So it's a full day. A painting nugget. What is a painting nugget? What can I impart on you? I think it's two things, and they go hand in hand. If you're a representational artist, sketch and observe. You can't do one, you can't sketch unless you really observe. Art Center, we had one of the first classes we had, we're supposed to draw everyday objects, at least 3 different views. One terribly fun, we could only use line. That's great. That's just great practice. But just draw. Just draw. It's the fundamental of any piece of art. You will get better. Does it come easy? No. Does it take practice? Yeah. Is it always fun? To me, it always is, even when I throw them away. You know, if somebody asks me, how come I don't see any bad painting drawings in here? Because I don't want to show you. I tear them up. But I do two drawings on each page, and so sometimes the bottom page isn't very good if the top one is good. So I make mistakes. Not a lot these days, but I have. It's just that's part of growing. So observe and draw and or sketch. That's it. Have a great time. Thanks, everybody.
Well, that's Paul Kratter, and the video is called Mastering Landscapes, and you can learn more about it at streamline.art. And there's a special discount code for you today only. Just look for the code up in the comments section. And by the way, we've got a great gift for you. It's called 97 Amazing Painting Tips, and it's yours for free just by going to 97tips.com. I'm Eric Rhodes. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, Paul Kratter here. Welcome to my plein air demo. In this demo, you're going to learn how important the sketch is, starting with this little tiny sketch, little 3" by 3" sketch basically with a ballpoint pen. You're going to learn about shapes, about design, about composition, about mistakes that I will make, I do, and also some experimentation and a lot of creativity. This video will help anybody that has a hard time starting a painting and having a consistent process all the way through. I've had that when I was first starting. I've had 40 years experience, 22 as a commercial illustrator and 18 as a plein air painter. It's not always easy. It takes a lot of practice, but I think you'll be able to follow along in these easy steps and yet still have a lot of room for creativity. Join me if you want. Take notes, just watch the video, but really enjoy it. I have a lot of information to give you, and I guarantee you'll have a good time along the way.